then I tell God, and as I remember, I said that out loud. I said, I'm gonna go to war against you. As soon as I said that, it dawned on me that if there's no God, there's no meaning.
We got the beach of Tel Aviv and Yafo in the distance. Amazing.
Beautiful.
But what's even more amazing is the story I'm about to hear right now about how you came to faith as a Jewish man in the Jewish Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus. What was the significant moment where you realized that this is the truth?
Well, when you ask me that, it sends me a bit even further back to a moment when I think it was either 16 or 17, and I was in my room, sitting on my bed and asking God with a complaint, why? Why? Why do you do this to me? Why do you do this to me? Nothing's working. My heart is broken.
Yeah.
The things that I long for, that I never get them.
Yeah.
Everything seems not to go my way. And then I tell God, and as I remember, I said that out loud. I said, I'm gonna go to war against you.
Wow.
Yeah. As soon as I said that, it dawned on me that if there's no God, there's no meaning. Instantly.
You're 17.
I'm 17, 16, something like that. And
Wow.
then I'm starting to think, so if there's no God, I went to war against him.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny because he's there, I'm fighting against him, but then I'm starting to think in an atheistic way, in an atheist way, that I have to find meaning. And that moment brought me to this journey of searching for meaning and truth. And it brought 2 years of darkness to my life. I was majoring in arts in high school, so I just went into deeper into the arts. I would just eat and drink art all day long. Photography, sculpting, painting, illustrating, everything. I would just, it became my God, actually. But it didn't give me answers, Actually, what happened is I became better and better in what I did, and I felt it doesn't give me any satisfaction. People tell me, wow, this is beautiful, you draw so well, you're so good. And I was like, it doesn't even give me a good feeling. It's vanity,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't even read Ecclesiastic to understand what vanity truly is, and I thought, the thing that I'm best at doesn't give me any satisfaction. So I continued on searching, and I would start to read, and I started to read philosophy. And I fell upon Nietzsche, of all people. Can you imagine like a 16-year-old Jewish kid reading Nietzsche, the German philosopher, in Hebrew, of course, it's translated. And I read it, and actually, so he's very, very, very super intelligent guy. So, of course, some things that he writes are true. But actually, it's so depressing because he kind of brings half the truth, Like, of course, we people, we go after our own interests, after our own passions. We don't really care about other people. We're not really moral. But I felt it's ugly, Why can't we be considerate to each other? Why can't we love each other? Something doesn't work. And it was just so depressing. And I got more into the arts, and I was reading, theater plays.
Yeah.
But they were so depressing too. And I was like,
You mean
wow.
like life, how it really is?
Yeah. It was like about, taking life to the extremes, talking about, we're born, we die, and in the middle, there's all these fightings.
Yes, if being born is an accident and then our death is an accident, then everything between must also be an accident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people don't get what they want in life. They all die without satisfaction. As I went more and more into the arts, then I started to like the process, but I was still lacking the meaning of life. I had no meaning for why am I doing it, So what happens in Israel, when you become 18, they take you to the army.
Yeah.
So the army stopped all that process.
Of your creativity.
Of my creativity and my journey and my search for meaning and truth. And I was in the army, totally alone.
Mm.
My friends were, we
All separated?
I mean, we were all separated,
Yeah.
and family and everything. So I was totally by myself. It's a situation I didn't actually experience before. And when you get to the army, they start shouting at you because they want you to have, extreme discipline,
Yeah.
and it's like this show, but it's really intense.
Yeah.
And at that point, regardless of everything, I started to turn back to God and to ask for His help, because I couldn't do any art, I couldn't do anything creative. I was in the most terrible place in the army, which is military police. There's nothing more hated than the military police,
Okay.
like everybody admires soldiers and people that
I see.
volunteer in the army, but you're the military police. I mean, and it wasn't my choice. So that's when I turned to God and asked for His help. What happened is that when you finish like the first few weeks, they give you a Bible,
A Hebrew Bible.
a Hebrew Bible.
Yeah. The
And
Tanakh.
yeah, and you swear on it.
Okay.
You swear allegiance to Israel and to the army. And once I received it, I felt like faith came back into my heart.
Okay.
And I went back to the tent. I opened the Bible in the book of Isaiah. I understood nothing, but I loved the language. Because Isaiah, he's so lyrical and beautiful. So I just read it, and I felt like faith came back into my heart. And that's when God started to win the war that I declared against Him.
Oh, wow. So you grew up in a very Jewish family. What was that like? What was your childhood like?
Well, I would say, it's a normal Jewish family in Israel. Not totally secular, but we were not religious.
Okay.
And we were not so traditional, because my father, he comes from, he passed away actually, but he came from Iraq, from the Jewish people of Babylon. And my mom came from, she was born in Israel, but her parents came from Poland. So you can imagine an Iraqi guy marrying a Polish girl. That's quite a combination,
Yeah.
right? I call this a salad. Israel is a salad, a mix of cultures, and God just brought us Jewish people from all over the world, and He mixes us here together in our multicultural backgrounds and challenges us. So I grew up in that house. My mom's dad was ultra-Orthodox, okay? He would go to the synagogue every day. He wore all black, and he was kind of like a rabbi, though he wasn't practicing, but people related him as a rabbi. He was a very good person, cared for people, and offered help all the time. And my father's family were also traditional. So they were, traditional yarmulke, and my grandma, Nana, she had, a veil. Here's an interesting thing. While I was a child, we didn't have really a lot of things on television, so we only had the Israeli channel, and we had the Cyprus channel, okay? Cyprus channel had 700 Club and stuff like that, channeling from Cyprus, and they had kids animations about the Bible.
Yeah.
You probably heard of Superbook,
Yeah.
and the Flying House.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about the old version, the
original
old
versions, yeah.
the original versions, beautiful. And I would see that almost every day. They broadcast it, So I actually met Jesus as a kid in English. That's
Here in Israel.
That's how I studied. That's how I learned English, by the way.
Wow.
Through television, and it stayed that level until today. But never mind. So so I started to learn some things about Jesus, though I didn't understand who He really was, But I knew a lot of things. I learned the parables and things in His life, and the Superbook would also tell you about the Bible stories,
Right.
and I loved the Bible stories. As a kid, I always had faith in God. Since I can remember myself, I had faith in God. And I have a strong memory of where my dad used to talk to me about God, and that was when I didn't finish my food. So he would say, if you don't finish your food, God's gonna be angry. So,
Wow.
So I had this idea that, God is the one that's checking us. But I also had this belief and faith that God is the one that loves us. So I would pray to him as a kid. Now here's an interesting thing. I was bar mitzvahed, like everybody, at the age of 13, okay? Unfortunately, my grandpa died just a few months before I was bar mitzvahed, so we couldn't see. But I came to do the bar mitzvah in his old synagogue where he used to pray every day. There weren't a lot of people on that Saturday in the synagogue. And one of the religious people, ultra-Orthodox, he was shouting, in a good sense, he was shouting and saying, people, we need to have a minyan. You know, a minyan is 10 people to pray for the coming of the Messiah, Bi'at HaMashiach. Now, that's the first time I remember I've ever heard that expression, that term, Mashiach, Messiah. And he was really exhorting people. We don't have 10 people, we don't have minyan. We have to pray for the coming of the Messiah. And I was thinking, this is so serious. Why people are not coming to pray? Why aren't they? And I didn't even understand the meaning of that. And as I grew, I learned more about that term because you start to meet that in different, places in Israel. So I learned a bit more about, our religion. I went to some conferences. I learned about the Kabbalah. You've probably heard of that. And I was drawn into that world in a way, but somehow I didn't find complete meaning in that, But I felt that as a Jew, or I don't know if it's as a person, but as a Jewish person, I felt lacking, like there's something missing. There's something that I'm supposed to have between me and God. I remember as a kid, I used to cherish Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur,
the Day of Atonement.
Yeah, it was the most special day in my eyes. Everybody fast for a complete 25 hours actually, just to be sure,
Yeah.
And the streets are totally quiet.
Yeah.
No cars, but a lot of bicycles
Right.
with kids and parents. But they tell you this story and they say, that's what I heard at least as a kid, that on Yom Kippur, on Atonement Day, the heavens open up. And if you get to see that, all your sins are forgiven. So I remember one specific Yom Kippur, one specific Day of Atonement, when I was sitting in my room, waiting at night for the heavens to open. And then I fell asleep. So it never happened for me. And so I never had this experience of the heavens opened, I see it, and my sins are forgiven. And it's interesting because even though I wasn't raised in a religious home or a believing home, I always had this sense of like, I'm not okay. I sin. I maybe didn't use that word, but I felt that, I do bad stuff. So in a way, there was always this feeling that I need forgiveness. So I'm jumping back to my days in the army, okay? Unexpectedly, I told you I was alone and I really wanted to do arts, but I was in military police. And they told me there's no graphic art in military police. Graphic art is the most close that I could get to doing art. But God just did a miracle. There was kind of like this prayer in my heart that this door would be opened and he would get me out of military police to do something that I'm good at. And I started to draw and paint on the walls of of my military base, not as vandalism. They asked me to, and then they kind of saw that I had this talent, and I asked them, maybe there's something that I can do with my talent, but they said no, there's nothing like that in the military police. So I was very discouraged. But then came the day when they gave you your deputation, like where you're gonna be, that's the right word. They told me, you're gonna be a graphic artist. And I was like, yeah, sure. Come on, you're pulling my leg. And I went off everybody went and called their parents, told them what they're gonna do. And I was just sitting there waiting, and I came to my commander and said, can you tell me what I'm gonna do? And she said, you didn't call your parents yet and tell them? I said, no, because you didn't tell me what I'm gonna do. I said, you're gonna be a graphic artist. And I said, what? But you said there's nothing like that. And here I am, a few months after that, in this office, doing graphic arts and animation in the army for all my service. So we just did these cool tutorials for soldiers of how to do stuff, what to do when a missile drops, and how to check if it's biological or chemical or whatever. And at the year of 1999, I was doing that, and I knew that God was working in my life because He answered my prayer and He brought me to that place. So I was more aware, and I would hear more talks about the Messiah, having no clue about what that thing is. But people start to tell me when the Messiah comes, then things will change, there'll be no jealousy, but he will come only for those that are just,
Righteous, yeah.
and righteous. And I was kind of, thinking about that. And I'm more of an intellectual type, so I'm not really drawn into the occult and all these mysteries.
Yeah.
But it really intrigued me, and I started to think about, who's the Messiah gonna be? I mean, if they talk about him all the time, I mean, is he supposed to come, as they say, on a donkey? But he's probably supposed to be born here. So I would start thinking, I'm on the bus, and I thought maybe he's one of the religious people, maybe he's that guy.
Yeah.
Just kind of like this funny game in my mind.
Yeah.
Then, at the year of 1999, I met a soldier that came to work with us in our team. It was a media team, actually, in the army. She told me about the Messiah, okay? She told me about Jesus. And I thought to myself, what? You're a Christian? You're Notzriya?
Yeah.
It's like you're a Gentile.
Yeah.
You're not even Jewish, It's like you've converted your religion. You're not part of us. It's faith for the Gentiles, not for Jewish people.
Right.
As much as I was amazed and surprised, in the same way, the Jewish people in Jesus' time were even more surprised that the Gentiles started to believe in Jesus.
Great point. Great point. Great point, because the question of that era was not how can you be Jewish and believe in Jesus, how can you be Gentile and believe in our Jewish Messiah?
Exactly.
Don't you have to become Jewish?
Exactly. I mean, Peter, he went to Cornelius in Caesarea, preached the gospel to him. They received the faith, the first Gentiles, right? He comes back home to Jaffa, probably somewhere over there, right?
Yeah.
And his friends, they tell him, what are you eating with a Gentile? And how could you preach the gospel to him? And he started to explain, as much as it amazes you, it amazed me, but God poured His Spirit upon them. And they were baptized. They received the message of the Messiah. And actually, he said, this is actually what's supposed to have happened, that the Gentiles would believe and hear. And not only that the Jewish people would reject their Messiah. Now, if I go back to the first time I heard that, I thought to myself, she's probably crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, this girl told me about Jesus, but I had a problem. She was the least crazy person I've ever met.
Wow.
Really, she was the most okay, normal, nice person that I've ever met. And that intrigued me. So I told her, you know what? I have a New Testament at home. I never read it. So I'm going to go back home and I'll check it out. And it actually, I didn't feel so comfortable with it because I understood that, nobody accepts Jesus in Israel. It's not the wisest thing to do. But I went back home. I took this book out of my shelf. And funny thing, when I got it? I got it in a rock festival when I was 14 or 15. I actually even don't know who gave it to me. I just remember a hand, it was earlier in the morning. I was so tired. I went like that, after this show.
You must have been in the United States at the Rock Festival to get a New Testament.
No, it was in Israel.
Crazy.
In Tiberias, Tzemach. So it was on my shelf, and I never had the courage to take it out and read in it, But here I am at the age of 20, and I'm taking it's the year 1999. I'm taking it out of the shelf, open it, and the first thing I read, this is the genealogy of Jesus Christ, Yeshua the Messiah, son of Abraham, son of David, and then it starts to go through, names from the Bible.
Right.
And I told you I was intrigued to know who the Messiah is, right? I was thinking about that mystery question, and I'm like, what? I should have known that. I studied history. I majored in the arts. I know so much about Christian art, and I don't know that he was called the Messiah. And I opened up the Bible. I opened up the Tanakh, the Old Testament,
Yes.
the Hebrew
Scriptures.
And I started to check. Everything I stumble on in the New Testament that mentions something from the Hebrew Scriptures, known as the Old Testament,
Yeah.
I went there, opened it up, and started reading. And here I am reading the Bible. And I'm in the book of Isaiah. Remember I told you in the army I opened the book of Isaiah, I didn't understand nothing? Here I am opening the book of Isaiah again, and I understand. And I go from the first chapter on, and my eyes are opened, and I think, wow, Isaiah in the first chapter, he rebukes the people of Israel for hypocrisy. And I've never think of that way, because I have to tell you, I had great esteem and honor, and I still do, for my people Israel and for our religion.
Yes.
There's many beautiful things in the Jewish religion, and I love our people. But Isaiah was talking about the problem of the heart, that people do things that look righteous, but their heart is corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really believe in God. Everything looks good in the outside, but the motives are terrible. And I really related to that, and I started to see these things in my reality, and I actually was amazed that when I read the New Testament, Jesus' rebuke was not only for the Jewish people in his time. He was rebuking religion as a system that became corrupt. And I started to have awareness to sins in my life that I never saw before. Like, I never really understood how I dishonored my mom and dad. And I never really understood how actually people around me were hurting each other so badly. Suddenly, everything was like someone lit the light, I didn't see something, I didn't have a vision, but someone kind of lit the light.
Yeah.
Someone like pulled the curtain, and now I see.
Remove the veil?
Remove the veil, yeah. And that was the beginning of my journey really into understanding who Yeshua is, who Jesus is. And I just mostly alone just had the Old and New Testament and just reading and researching and comparing. And I start to understand that what I'm understanding is so unpopular and so unaccepted. But the more I read and the more I understood, I was convinced that there was something true about that.
Yeah. Well, you love the Bible so much, you actually teach it.
Yeah.
You actually teach the Bible now, and I love your teachings, actually.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're such a great teacher. When did you actually recognize that, okay, this is it? Not I'm studying, I'm researching, this is it. What happened?
So you can take all of these things that I saw in the Bible. Like, I could see how the prophets complement each other, and how the Old Testament complements the New. When I say Old Testament, it's just so people can understand, because it's not really an Old Testament, God didn't break his covenant with the Israeli people. We did.
Yes.
And we needed the Messiah to come. And I could see that picture from the end of the book, from the book of the law. I mean, the end of the book of the law ends with a tragedy. And I mean, the people, Moses tells them, you're gonna lose your faith.
Yeah.
You're gonna be banished from your land. Now here I am, so many years after that, when the prophecies have been fulfilled. I know what my dad went through, that he had to come to Israel. He almost died on the way. I know that my grandpas from Poland, when they fled at 1935, they fled the Nazis. So my mom and my dad were saved, from death. But God brought them, like in the prophecies, to Israel, established a new country, exactly as it's told in the scriptures. And when I read the New Testament, I saw it was so Jewish. I mean, if you don't read that, you don't know that.
You don't know. I get a lot of criticism from people that have, mostly the people that I get the most criticism have never read the New Testament.
It's always like that,
Yeah.
You have to read the New Testament to understand. I read it and I saw that it was so Jewish. But here's the thing. I wasn't sure about Jesus. Was he really the Messiah? Or maybe that's all just a big story, they just, like a conspiracy of something like that. And then someone showed me Isaiah chapter 53. It's in the Hebrew scriptures, one of the prophets, the first major prophet. And then I was asked, who do you think that is? And I said, it's obviously Jesus. It's obviously Yeshua. I mean, it's exactly the same things that he went through, and it's exactly the things that the New Testament is talking about. Now, I could see that message then in other prophecies in the Bible, and I could see how we needed God to come in the flesh to die for our sins and to rise again because he was not guilty and give us new life. And that was when I had this proof, and I was convinced. And when you realize things like that, you also, I have to tell you, I realized that if I do follow Jesus, now that I understand, then nobody's going to understand. My friends will not understand, my parents, my brothers, my family. And that's exactly what happened. I really tried to explain myself, but I wasn't so adequate in the way I did that at that time. But that's what happened. I mean, people didn't understand. They thought like it's just a lie and it's wrong and I can't believe in that. But that's actually what Jesus said would happen. I mean, he said people won't accept you because they don't accept me.
Right.
So it kind of like strengthened what I've learned to see as true. And also, the people that I told these things about never wanted to confront the books themselves, just to check it,
Right.
A lot of it was from lack of interest, because the world was more interesting. Things that happen here are more interesting. But for me, my life was changed and I found meaning, and God defeated me in the battle that I challenged him to.
Yeah.
But he made me the winner.
Wow.
So, when they say, there is this parable when Jesus says that he who drinks from me will never thirst again, right? He who drinks from the water I give him
yes.
will never thirst again. And what does that mean? For me, my search is done. I'm not searching for anything else. I really, really am satisfied that I know who God is, truly who he is. He is our Father in heaven, and he sends his Holy Spirit to dwell in our hearts.
Yes.
If you remember Yom Kippur, you remember I told you that the sky should have opened.
Yeah.
If I see that, then my sins will be forgiven. And I feel God did so much more than that. He put the Holy Spirit in my heart, me, a sinner, a great sinner. He made me to be like his temple. And not only me, any person in the world that wants to be in connection with him, that wants to be saved, regardless of any differences that we have among us.
Wow, Tamir. What an amazing, amazing testimony. I mean, I had a very similar experience where the Spirit of God came in, and someone that hasn't experienced it will not understand, which is very difficult for us because we want not only for people to understand, but we want people to also experience it themselves.
Yeah.
The life change that comes from forgiveness of sin and receiving God's Spirit.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to describe because it's personal, but yet we see it happening to millions of people all over the world, but to so many of our Jewish people here in Israel.
Yeah.
It's happening here.
It's liberating.
It is, it's totally liberating, but at the same time, we are charged to share the message with our own people. And it's not always fun, and it's not always easy, but we do it because we love God so much. So thank you, Tamir.
Thank you.
May God continue to bless you and your beautiful family.
Oh, thank you so much.
And thank you all for watching this amazing video. If you have any questions for me or for Tamir, please leave them in the comments section. And if you want to get in touch with us, we have our email down in the description. Please subscribe to the channel and continue to follow us and help push these videos out by giving it a like. And stay tuned for more testimonies like this because they are happening and a lot more today than they ever have before in the land of Israel. God bless you all. Take care.